Epstein. So you've got Attorney General Pam Bondi being secretly recorded at a lunch admitting that there are 10,000 tapes and then being forced into this impromptu press conference to do damage control. So let's take a look here.
Her press office.
There are tens of thousands of videos. Yeah, and it's all with little kids.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
And somehow nobody blinked about that, by the way. And then you've got Kasparian Patel and Bongino, two guys who question everything, suddenly turning around and saying it's unilaterally confirmed that Epstein was a suicide. Let's take one more look at this one.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to?
I can't.
I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
That looks like a hostage video.
It does, right?
Real. I'm keeping it real, yes.
Jack, I was going to go to you first on this one. Thoughts?
You were at the White House.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, so, I mean, a couple things. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen everything that they've seen. I would love to see if there are tapes. I want to see all the tapes. There were some photos that came out. I'd love to see more of all of that. I spent a little under a year at Guantanamo Bay, so I know what prison suicides look like. That was something we dealt with quite a bit down there, and all sorts of detention related violence that goes on in between detainees, as well as detainees trying to kill themselves. In that case, sometimes it would be in the name of jihad or what have you, as opposed to something like a pedophile killing themselves in jail. So again, I want to see the evidence. That's what it comes down to for everything on that. But when it comes to the tapes and the files, and you mentioned, I was in this. I have gone to the White House. I have asked for the Epstein Files, and there was this binder that we were given from DOJ, which I don't think necessarily was meant in bad faith, but unfortunately, a lot of the material that we had in that binder had already been seen. There were a few pieces that that were new, but it wasn't substantially new. And that's the thing everybody wants, because at the end of the day, we keep hearing, oh, the Epstein tapes, oh, the Epstein Files, and it's coming. So when you gas up people like that and you tell them that, hey, this is right around the corner, TikTok, and it's about to come out, you have to actually deliver at some point.
And it was a campaign promise. It's something that I was definitely interested in Trump actually carrying out and doing.
Well, and the question is that I would prefer a lot more, and I think there does need to be more transparency on this, is she mentions the 10,000 tapes. Are there 10,000 tapes? Do you have possession of them, or have you heard of them?
Exactly, yeah.
Or was this something that was potentially destroyed by agents or whoever have you, and we're not going to see them at all?
Jack, do you think we're going to get an additional onslaught of files, or is this it?
I wouldn't hold my breath at this point.
Right.
I really wouldn't hold my breath.
Right. I wanted to ask you, what do you think was their intention when they did that publicity stunt? Because surely they should have known that people are going to realize that it's a whole nothing burger, that most of the stuff's redacted or it's already been seen. What impression do you think they were trying to give when they did that? And did they just not have the foresight to think ahead and have everybody realize?
Yeah, I think it could have been handled better, obviously. And having been look, they invited us in and we're there. And by the way, this was not just a one-on-one kind of thing. So there were different, Bobby Kennedy came in, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Caroline Leavitt came in, Vice President Vance came in. So
Pam Bondi was there too.
And then Pam Bondi came in, so, along with Kasparian Patel. So it wasn't like it was a one-on-one, and we didn't even hear the words Epstein Files when we were all brought in.
Oh,
and
really?
So there were a bunch of
new
media figure. It was just sort of a new media day at the White House. So I'm there, and a bunch of other influencer types are there. DC Drano, lives at TikTok.
Scott Presler was there.
Scott Presler, yeah. And so
Did you feel like you were kind of, you and the others who were included in this, I think Laura Loomer was included in it as well.
She
Did
wasn't.
you feel,
She
oh,
was
she
not
wasn't.
there.
She
She wasn't
raised
there.
Okay.
hell about not being included,
Did
actually.
you feel at any point that maybe all the folks that were included in this were kind of just used as pawns to give the illusion that the Trump administration released the Epstein files?
I don't know, because what I was going to say was that, again, there was no communication beforehand about, you know, that these files or these binders would even be presented. And actually, you know, it was just sort of said, hey, do you guys want to see the Epstein files? Well, yes, obviously. And then someone just walks, like a staffer just walks in the room with a stack of binders. Oh, wow, what is this? And so we're trying to, you know, kind of go through it, but we're also in the meeting, so you don't really have time to track all, and it's long and it's textual, so you can't search it or anything. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're, oh, you have to go to your next meeting. Well, and it just so happened, supposedly, that so Keir Starmer, who had just become the Prime Minister of the UK, was about to show up like 10 minutes after. So he was basically going to be in the room right after us. So when we leave the West Wing portico, the entire media is there with all the cameras out, and everyone's set up waiting for the PM, not for us.
Oh, I see.
And so they say, hey, what are Poso and Cernovich and all these guys doing holding all these binders? And what does that binder say? And point being is, I don't necessarily think that it was intentional. I think it was just a series of unfortunate events that kind of played out in a way that looked bad online, but I really don't think it was intentional.
My prediction is that we're never going to get any information about those tapes. You know, Pam Bondi framed it as, you know, it's tapes of Epstein himself, you know, doing these things.
That's what she had to
The reason why I think that we're not going to ever know anything about the tapes, see them, know who's in them, is because it's not just Epstein.
Of course not.
I think a lot of people in positions of power in this country have been implicated in those tapes, and either those tapes have already been destroyed or they're doing whatever it takes to prevent them from being released.
Can I bring up one thing that Benny Johnson told me that I did not know? And when I did some fact checking on it, it turns out everything he told me was true. So he starts out by talking about a gentleman named Donald Barr, who was a part of OSS, which apparently was the precursor to the CIA. Donald Barr apparently takes Epstein under his wing, gives him this job at the financial institution, and is also the one who connects Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Robert Maxwell,
Bingo.
her father, and then she, you know, is introduced to Epstein through her father.
Right. And supposedly Robert Maxwell has ties to Mossad. So now you have ties to CIA, ties to Mossad. And then if we just continue to skip
As
forward,
well as the royal family.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So if you continue to skip forward, right, no one knows where the money for his funds came from. That's all weird. But it turns out, to circle this all the way back to the friggin' Kash Patel, Dan Bongino tape clip that we just ran, the guy who signed Epstein's death certificate is Donald Barr's son, Bill Barr. What are the odds? Just like, really? Nobody. That's why I think, given all that.
It gets weirder than that. Guess who visited him right before he died by suicide, quote unquote? Bill Barr. He paid him a visit to the prison.
He was he still the Attorney General at the time?
At the time,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, he was
Okay.
Yeah.
I just find the whole thing to be very fishy. So I, like Jack just said, I want to see the evidence
You're never
of
seeing it.
of how he actually committed suicide. And Jack, I heard you mention something earlier in a separate conversation. You mentioned something fishy about the configuration of the room, of the prison room.
Oh, well, yeah. So there were some photos that were released. I don't know if you guys have them or maybe you pull it up, but there were some photos that were released after his body was taken out, where you could see that he had taken, I guess, strips of the different, prison uniforms and was using them to, it looked as though he had tried to kill himself multiple times throughout the room. And so there was like a tie on one side, you've seen it,
Yeah, I mean,
and a
he
tie on
was
the
on
other
suicide
side,
watch.
and
Suicide
had been on
watch.
suicide watch.
They
and
just
so-
stopped watching when he actually committed
and so
suicide.
it all just looks very fishy. That's all I was saying about
suddenly
those.
didn't work.
About those photos. And well, I think the cameras, I don't think there were cameras on the cell itself. I think there were cameras on the cell block. And there was a camera that went perpendicular to that. So it was the other hallway before you got to that cell block. And that camera was off. So you couldn't see whether or not someone had arrived
Right.
and then gone down the hall. And so, look, there's a big piece of this, though, that I think a lot of people miss is, so much focus on Epstein. Look, he's not around anymore. Right. You know who is Ghislaine Maxwell. She's sitting right there in prison. So I've always said, why not go, and I say this as a guy who was in an intel, right? So I was an intel officer, literally served at Guantanamo. Take your thoughts on that and whatever, like we did it. And so when you look in terms of intelligence collection, why not cut her a plea deal and say, all right, you get whatever much time off your sentence, but we need this. We need the network, we need the clients, we need the rest of it.
Gone. Yeah, I don't think she'd survive that.
She's not dead now?
Well, she hasn't been speaking, right?
That we know
She's
of.
just off the friggin' map. No one thinks of her. No one talks of her.
I would put pressure there, whether public or not.
I think that's smart, actually.
I hope that it's done.
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.